Hey everyone, so we thought that we would make a video today to talk about how to read and understand what's in a research article. There's a lot of articles that are referenced in papers or New York Times articles that we might read. So we thought it would be good to go through what we sort of look at in research articles to understand the meaning behind the research article and how good the evidence is that that's being quoted in these articles that we're seeing so frequently. So Justin, what do you look for when you first look at an article?
So I think the first thing I do is I just Google the actual article. So a lot of times if you're reading the New York Times or you're reading whatever it might be, or internet or someone on Facebook quotes something, I just Google the actual article to see like who the author is and what journal it was from, where it was published. Just because sometimes you'll get an idea right away, like, oh, this is not, that person has been arrested for whatever before, or they've been accused of plagiarism a million times or something. And so you could immediately throw it out once you just read that thing. Mm-hmm. What about you? Where do you start?
So I do the same thing. I go to the article itself because that's where you're going to get the most information from. And then I like to I start at the abstract, which is on the first page of the article. And I never
get past the abstract, so you're good.
A lot of times you don't, yeah. But it gives you a real good snapshot of what you're looking at, what the article is about, including the number of people that were included in the study and what the study was about, some information about what they found in the study. And especially depending on the reason you're looking at the article, it can really give you some information as to whether the article is giving you the information that you're hoping to get from the article. So I start there, and then what do you sort of do next?
I think so. Then, like the next thing that I like to look at is try and figure out like if you can tell who paid for the study or where it came from. So a lot of times, especially if you're looking up different things in like the health and wellness field, you'll find out that a certain supplement or a certain type of treatment that the research was basically paid for the people who do the thing. Mm-hmm. And so one of the easy ones that kind of like comes to mind is there's the electrolyte supplement Element. Mm-hmm. And so they pay for a ton of research to be done on the benefits of using electrolyte replacement things, and then they get them published, and the authors have to disclose that. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad research, but you do know that there's a little bit of bias and that they're kind of looking at it for a specific reason and hoping to prove a specific thing. And so that's kind of the next place I go, is to see if you can figure out who paid for it.
Yeah. And then sort of going off of that, once you can sort of figure out if there might be bias related to, who paid for it, who did the research, if you go to the end of the research study, you can also see other reference articles that they may have referenced that they included in their research about the topic that they're researching. And so that's always a good thing to look at too, because one, you can see if all of the other articles are also the same, the same company or the same researchers doing it, that can give you some clues about bias. But it also can give you some good other sources that you can look at to see what other people, what research they did on the same topic. Yeah. Can give you some good insight as to just how biased maybe that research is, or how good that research is. So that's something I look at too.
Yeah. So I think we spend a lot of time, probably more time than I was happy with in school, going over how to do this. But sometimes it's really helpful too. So you go through that, you figure out, all right, it's done by like an independent group. It was some school or university. They were funded by a national grant or something. And then the next thing you want to try and figure out is, does this actually mean anything? Like, is it able to show me anything? And so at that point, the next kind of place that I go is to try and figure out how many people were in the study and like where did they get these people. I think, a long time ago, like a lot of research was done on college campuses, and so they just like used a bunch of college students, and then they couldn't figure out why it didn't hold true for like 70-year-old adults. Right. And so that's the next place to figure out, is like, hey, where did they get these people, and how many, like, is there one subject, and is it just a cool story of one thing that happened, which can be helpful? Or is it 10,000 people, and this might actually represent what could happen in real life?
Yeah, I agree with that. And, not only numbers and where they got them, but who they're looking at. You talked about age, but gender is another thing. Race is another thing for certain studies that's important in affecting the results. And really being able to paint a picture of how, whatever the study results, how they'll be able to then be translated into what you would actually see in like real life. So that's important. I also like to look at the type of study it is. So the type of study can give you a good idea. Like you said, you talked whether like a case study is not going to give you maybe as good quality evidence as something that is randomized and controlled. So you have to look at that information too to sort of understand what factors played into maybe what led to some of the results that they're talking about. It's very different if you have 500 people and it's a randomized controlled, double-blinded study as compared to, a case control study where there are, there's one case and one control, something like that. So so that's what I looked at. And you get all that information in the methods part of the paper that you would look there. What do you do next?
I think after that, I want to try and figure out what they were trying to prove. So I'll sort of look at like, if you go back to high school, I don't know, bio or something like that, right? And they talked about like, what was the hypothesis or what are you trying to get out of this? And then figure out what their conclusion is and how they did it. And then I just want to figure out if it's applicable to me. So I'll sort of like jump into the conclusion section and see if they say at the end of it that, we just have to do more research in order to learn, which is always like the job security line at the end of a research study. Then to me, it's kind of like, all right, did they really get anything out of this? And I think one of the hard parts is with finding things that are just kind of quoted in journalism is that the journalists, they're going to try to do their best to figure out good studies and what they're doing and how does this apply, but they're not experts in reading research just as well as like not a lot of other people are either. And so some of these things go missed, and it can be easy to quote something because it sort of goes in the direction your story's going to go. And it's hard to be able to sort of tease these things out.
Yeah, especially because the writers of these research papers are trying to either prove or disprove the hypothesis. So the things that they're writing that might be something that grabs the attention of said journalist, for example, sometimes it can be a little bit of a reach to try to get to that hypothesis or get to how the data that they got from the study proves or disproves that hypothesis. So if you really wanted to get into the weeds of it, you could go into the results and look at the results. Now, it's a lot of numbers. I don't generally look at the numbers.
Too much statistics.
Yeah, I don't look at the numbers. Sometimes they do have charts in there that are easier to look at, and you can see, sort of how some of the variables affected the different groups involved in the study, which is sometimes gives you more information. Like if it's a study where there were side effects, it can tell you information about who had the side effects and stuff like that. So sometimes you can look there if you have any, questions about, what exactly their conclusions are meaning. But yeah, there's a lot of numbers that, Too
many numbers. I think the biggest thing is that for the average person that is trying to, now so much information is available to so many people that it's really important that people learn to tell whether or not they're getting good information or bad information. And so I think if you just really jump in there and figure out who paid for this thing and who was doing the work and what their goal was when they started out, and then what their result was at the end, that'll give you a good idea of whether this is something you want to make a decision on or not. And it'll help you figure out if the source that you kind of started at is good or bad.
Yeah, for sure. So this video goes along with our blog post for the week. So if you want more information specifically about if you're looking at a research study and you want to sort of figure out what some of the terms mean or something like that, a lot more of that information is in our blog post for the week. So you can head over to our website to check that out. Otherwise, we're always open to more conversations about that. So about this topic. So you can bring those in with your appointments. You can contact us on social media. But otherwise, until next time.
See you later.